let's jump into some over-unders. We got to figure out season long who's going to go over, who's going to go under. And joining us to do it, how about this? We've got Mike Ryan. Let's get into it, shall we?
But I do have a question coming off of episode 1. You ended episode 1 by saying it's been a thin slice of heaven, right?
Right.
Is that a personal preference? I've never heard that saying before. I've heard a slice of heaven before, but a thin slice, is that like a personal preference? And what are we talking about? In fact, pizza pies or pies?
First of all, thank you for being a listener. That's very kind. I want to be a gentleman and have a good sense of manners. That actually is stolen from John Lovitz in a league of their own. He leaves the women that he has recruited and dropped off at Wrigley Field, and his goodbye to them is, well, ladies, it's been a thin slice of heaven. That's where that one comes from.
All right. Do you know what he meant by it?
I'm not quite sure what was in Lovitz's head at the time, but I have a question about what's in your head. I just finished belly aching about people leaning in a little bit too hard. I also don't care if that's what you love about football, and this is sort of your methadone as we run up towards the real thing in September. So be it. The thing that caught my eye beyond, I just don't really care much about the individual performances. I don't think that they ultimately really decide whether or not a kid is going to be a starting player. What caught my eye, and I know it does yours, Mike, is the uniforms. I don't think we'll see a worse uniform matchup all season long than the Chiefs in their red pants and red hats at the Cardinals wearing their red jerseys and red pants. Too much!
Oh, that's disgusting. AFC South is pretty good for some bad uniform matchups, though, especially with the Jaguars, their proclivity to wear the dark pants. There's a couple of, like, all blues versus just white tops with the Jaguars Texans there. The last Hall of Fame game that we had was like one of the worst ones of all time too.
There's two shades of blue. You can't. Yeah, they clash. That's it.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. When the Texans are on the road at Chicago, not even the turf is playing nice with you at that point. It is just an assault on the eyes. Yeah, that's another underrated part about the aesthetics game when it comes to the NFL. It's not just the jerseys, the turf. The weather outside has a lot to do with it.
You know what, Mike? You and me need to carve out some time, maybe even every week once we get into the season, for a little fashion corner. I know it's not everybody's bailiwick, but it is yours and mine. We like talking about uniforms, so let's make a point to do that right
That's great.
now.
I wish I knew what a bailiwick was, but also...
Me too. I've just heard it before, and it seems like it would apply here. I don't know for sure.
What'd you make of the Chicago Bears Virginia Hallis McCaskey patch that is adorning their chest at the moment? It is a massive memorial patch. I haven't seen a memorial patch that big in quite some time. I don't think ever.
I don't know if this is disrespectful to the dead, but I think the worst thing you can do is the big black armband, because then it is omnipresent in every shot. And if you make a deep playoff run, then it's always like, oh yeah, somebody died that year, and you can never get too far away from it. In fact, it's funny that the Bears would screw it up, because the George S. Hallis that is still there to this day is the coolest enduring homage to one of the OGs of pro football. All right, listen. Let's stop with this. I said we'll do a fashion corner at a later date. Right now, let's get into some over-unders. Mike Ryan, seed control to Mike F. Let's start it off with some over-unders. I do want to say before we get going, though, here, I am standing by update. I told you last week, and I will update it as news unfolds here during the season. I'm going to stay with my Super Bowl 60 pick for this week. Buffalo Bills, San Francisco 49ers. You can get that exact matchup at 4-1. And now, Mike F., let's get into some season-long over-unders.
A bailiwick is actually one sphere of operations or particular area of influence. It's also the jurisdiction of a bailiff.
I don't know what any of those words mean.
Me neither. Anyway, Buffalo Bills under 11.5 wins. You can get it at plus 145 with our partners DraftKings on DraftKings Sportsbook.
Does the guest go first?
Yes.
I'd like you to. 11.5 wins.
We're a courteous show.
You, Mike?
Well, I just want to make sure I'm decisive. I want to be Tom Brady, releasing the ball quick.
Quick reads.
I like the Buffalo Bills a lot this year. There's a weird kinship that I have with the Buffalo Bills franchise because being a legacy Browns fan, no longer a Browns fan. I remember when the Bills invited displaced Browns fans into Ralph Wilson Stadium to say, hey, let's commiserate. You like bad football. we can be that for you. So I have always liked the Bills. I loved their fan base. I loved going to a game over there. As soon as I saw the red helmets being back, and this is one of the rare places that Dave and I disagree, more proof of concept for Fashion Corner. I think it pops. I think that red helmet with the blue tops, I think it pops. I like the Buffalo Bills for all those other reasons. Also, they've done so much suffering, not just forever, but this core group has done the suffering. I think they're going to win the AFC, so I'm going to take the over on that. And I like the division in which they can get fat off of some flat tracks.
Boy, I haven't really considered that fact. We associate the Buffalo Bills with sorrow, high-end sorrow. It's not like they're irrelevant, a bum team like the Jets. They're good a lot, and now the Josh Allen era is starting to take on a kind of stink that is familiar for Buffalo fans who experienced the K-Gun era there, although Jim Kelly got the Super Bowls. I don't know if you heard about that. The Red Hats I don't like. Mina Kimes picked the same thing you did, which is the Bills and Lions are America's two true teams. Forget about what the Cowboys allege themselves to be to football America. So yes, a Lions and Bills Super Bowl would be grand for any objective football fan. Here's an interesting thing about the Bills, though. They pretty consistently in this era get the double-digit wins and have done so for at least the last 5 years. The last 4 results, they have gone 11 wins, then 13 wins, then 11 wins, then 13 wins. That means that this is the year for them to win only 11 games. I'm going under, and the payout is plus 145. Gino, what's next?
Lions missed the playoffs.
Ooh, I don't know how you could do that. Now, I don't think that they're going to make the Super Bowl. I know that they've also done a fair amount of suffering. I have questions about how they're going to respond with their offensive coordinator. Now, I do think Ben Johnson got a little too much credit, and people like to sleep on Dan Campbell. I also subscribe to the theory that Dan Campbell's a lot smarter than he lets on because he likes people kind of underestimating him. But I think they make the playoffs. I think they falter once again, and it may come at the hands of a division rival over there. I am really bullish on the Green Bay Packers. I took some futures on the Green Bay Packers. I took Jordan Love to win MVP. I think that they come out of the NFC. So that's the case.
That's my Super Bowl pick too.
Yes, but it would be a real surprise. It would mean that Goff got either hurt or fell off the face of the earth, which we've seen happen before. After a Super Bowl run, we were all worried about Jared Goff's career. So it's possible, but I think missing the playoffs is a road to hoe, and I would not like to take that under.
Well, they're built at the line of scrimmage, are the Lions, and they like to bully teams around, and they've lost 2 of their vets from the offensive line. So I think that's an issue. I disagree with you about Ben Johnson. I think he was the not-so-secret sauce that made that team go. I don't think in week 1 it's going to reveal itself. I think it's going to be a slow bleed with him and Aaron Glenn being elsewhere, and I think the Lions are going to get vaguely worse as the season goes along, not unlike the Philadelphia Eagles did in between their 2 Super Bowl runs. Plus 145, once again, is your payout. I don't know if I can go that far, but I am with you about the Packers. I think they're going to end up winning that division. I haven't made a final decision just yet, but I am leaning that way in the NFC North. Mike, how say you? What's next?
Falcons over 9.5 wins.
Ooh, this one's tough. I hate trying to handicap the NFC South. And I do think that division... the whole thing about it was people would go from last to first a lot. It's always hard to predict. If there is a team that I think can surprise, I usually love the trend of the team that finishes strong to close out the year. And it felt like Carolina did that. It was also, it lined up with Bryce Young seemingly growing to twice the size that he was prior to the benching. So someone should probably look into that. But I can't quite get there. Atlanta does carry itself like a franchise that truly believes in Michael Penix. It's weird, the Kirk Cousins thing that exists there. I like the weapons around him, and we know from his time at Washington, Michael Penix will air it out. This one's right. This one's a stay away from me, but the nature of the game isn't stay away. I got to go over or under. I will... very, very carefully say under here.
All right, if you go over, that's where the juice is, plus 225 on that. And I will say, first of all, with Kirk Cousins, we need some odds on his next team. Circle the LA Rams. This is a big week. Matthew Stafford apparently tracking towards good health, but I don't know if that's a smokescreen. And if Matthew Stafford can't go with a team that a lot of people think has a Super Bowl run in them this year, obviously it's a drop-off from Stafford from Cousins, but I think that's the best available they could possibly do at this point. So be on the lookout for Cousins to the Rams. That might be a possibility. As far as the division they're in, you got to be aware of the neighborhood and look at who the Falcons go up against. They have 4 games against the atrocious Saints and the potentially bad Carolina Panthers. If they win 3 of those games, well, now they're pretty far along the way to getting to double-digit wins. I like this team. I got a little over my skis a year ago with where they were. I think this year they arrive a little bit and they have a real chance to win the division, even with the Buccaneers, because Tampa Bay's defense is going to be lousy this year. Maybe Michael Penix and Bijan and the rest of the Cats make a lot of hay when they hook up against each other. What's next?
And Dave, you want to talk about over-unders? That first week 1 total, Bucks against the Falcons, I think that's at Mercedes-Benz. Those 2 teams teamed up for some fun ones. Both quarterbacks like to air it out and take chances down the field. That might be an over just on a game total.
All right, so we're going to stay with the wins totals here, and I'm going to throw this one right back at Dave because this is a plant by you, obviously. Steelers over under 9.5 wins, and make sure you read this correctly. They didn't say 8.5. They said 9.5.
Well, I said 9.5 because you can get it at 8.5 as well, but DraftKings allows you to move that number around to your liking, and it is to my liking to get some juice attached to it. Plus 130. I'll say it a million times. I'm concerned about the offensive line, the development of the tackles specifically. There aren't a ton of holes here. Obviously, their quarterback is long in the tooth. For the millionth time, Mike Tomlin is the greatest floor raiser of the millennium. There's no reason to think that the Steelers, who got the double digits a year ago, aren't going to do the same with Aaron Rodgers, the future Hall of Famer, no matter how diminished he is. Of course, I'm going to double-digit wins and over the 9.5. Plus 130 will be my reward. Mike, how say you?
I agree on everything. Even though I'll readily admit that I don't have wild expectations for Aaron Rodgers, I think he does present an upgrade over what they had before, although the stats kind of tell you something different. Russell Wilson, the problem with Russell Wilson was they didn't trust him to air it out. You saw from even the playoff game, once he started airing it out, there was some rewards over there. I think Mike Tomlin's going to trust Aaron Rodgers a little bit more. I am curious to see which middling receiver he decides to turn into an all-pro by force-feeding them. We know that they have DK Metcalf, but who's going to be the guy that becomes the old mediocre talent that Aaron Rodgers falls in love with? It's actually been, self-sabotaging, whether it be an offensive coordinator or a guy that he demands come on the roster like a Randall Cobb.
Alan Lazard.
Who's going to be the Alan Lazards of the world? Who's going
Anyone
to be
but Alan Lazard, please.
Who is going to be the guy that ascends for the Pittsburgh Steelers? But on the macro level, Dave,
watch out for Roman Wilson to answer your question. Year 1 was basically a red shirt. He was hurt for the majority of it. So, yeah, watch out for him. And Calvin Austin is a burner, but he's tiny. So I think those would be your 2 primary best bets.
I don't know how they get there, but I agree with you. They get there.
All right, we're going to skip ahead a little bit here because
couple more, yeah.
I want to make sure we get this one in for Mike. Marvin Harrison Jr. over 975.5 yards. Mike has history with this player, history with this pick. Mike, what do you think this year?
Man, what a bad nickname this guy has. It should be MIATA Marv. How are you called Maserati Marv and you're slow? And to help with that speed, he's gained about 25 pounds of muscle. It's historically really worked for the franchise when the Ohio State wide receiver decides to gain 25 pounds of muscle.
Look at the David Boston callback.
I don't know what's going on. I see videos of him getting shut down by 7th-round draft picks. I was so wrong, Dave. This was my stone-cold lead pipe lock. Marvin Harrison, the receiving yards over. And, by the way, we were in play still towards the end of the season, despite him looking lousy.
We all believed you.
We all believed you. Dude, yeah. I locked that one in.
Yeah.
I have PTSD when a Buckeye decides to gain 25 pounds of muscle for the Arizona Cardinals franchise. I'm out on this guy. I'm capitulating. I'm out on Mazda Miata Marv.
Yeah, he embarrassed you, and now you're going to show him by not believing him in his sophomore year. a dozen, 15 years ago, it used to always be with wide receivers getting to the NFL. It takes till year 3 till they really arrive. Then rookie started to break through. I think we're in the sweet spot here. This is a legit talent, Marvin Harrison Jr., obviously. Good situation for him, obviously. I think he is going to. And I think we're still getting used to collectively the idea that there are not 16 regular season games, rather there are 17. And so if you're a halfway decent pass catcher in today's NFL, you should get to 4 figures. I say he finally does it. Well, finally does it. He didn't do it in his rookie season.
2 years into it.
He's a career bust. Yeah, I think he'll get it this year.
Believe me, I was hanging on to that 17th game theory only because of Marvin Harrison's struggles last year. But I do think Arizona makes it to the playoffs this year. I think they're undervalued in the market. I think they're feisty. Kyler Murray was a great quarterback to have when you were chasing points. The back door was seemingly always open. I like this team. I think they got a sneaky amount of talent, and they could even survive Marvin Harrison disappointing yet again.
Well, right. There are questions at least about the Niners, and if Matthew Stafford can't go there, it's not insane to say that you think the NFC West is in play for these Cardinals. But Mike, dynamite stuff. Thank you so much for joining us here today. Let's put a pin in that idea. The fashion corner, you and me will put our heads together and tell everybody what looks good and what doesn't look good. Also, for the next time we do some over-unders, let's figure out who the odds-on favorite is to win a head coach fight. I think it comes down to Dan Campbell and
Dan Campbell's the only answer.
Well, what about Mike Vrabel?
No, dude, McVay too. McVay's got some guns on him. I remember him from. He's a little guy.
You know what? They're weight classes for a reason.
That's true, but he's probably feisty. He's
Campbell will throw
a little thick.
I think Mike Tomlin figures out a way to come ahead.
That's a good point.
He
always does.
He's always going to find a way to leave the building alive.